What up, boys? So it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but it's about 1 a.m. and I figure it's about time. I do apologize that we're not out in the treehouse, but unfortunately, as I said before, it's 1 a.m. So if I went out there right now, it'd be completely dark. You guys wouldn't be able to see shit, which actually for a lot of you guys probably would be an upgrade over me. But here I am, so too bad. Guys, it's been something I've been thinking about a lot. And the main thing that I want to talk to you guys about today is the way that people's like channel analytics and their current like viewer count numbers, like subscriber count, and just different channel analytics and metrics that they use to kind of define themselves as if they're doing well or not well, how that affects them as an individual, and then also how that affects their perception in terms of like the audience, and then also in terms of other creators. I think this is a big, really big topic, and really there's been a micro event that's kind of happened that spurred me into having like I guess a conversation with myself and really starting to think about this topic a lot and explore the different facets of it. And I think it's one of those things that's almost like a taboo to talk about, because a lot of times I think people don't really like to talk about it. It's almost the same as like talking about money and like making money online. There's a lot of people that don't want to talk about that, and I'll be honest, like if you're on Twitch, why do you not want to talk about that? It's because then people think you won't need the money, right? So you want to appear like, hey man, I really need this money, so they keep donating. And I've seen so many people doing that. It's funny, right? And is it deceptive? Yeah, I guess so. But hey, people gotta do what they gotta do. But that's not really the whole point of this video. The point of the video is the way that these metrics and everything do affect people. And the micro event that really kind of led to this conversation and this video ultimately is Twitch. I think this was at E3. I'm not really sure specifically where it was. Doesn't really matter ultimately. Twitch was giving out these partner jackets, and on the partner jackets, they gave different broadcasters these little patches, and the patches showed what their highest average concurrent viewer count has been, right? So they had like a 5K patch, a 10K patch, I'm sure like a 500 or 1,000. I think it went all the way up to like 30,000 or something like that, right? So obviously it got to be pretty exclusive. There's not really a whole lot of people that have ever hit 30,000 viewers before. So whenever you think about that, obviously it doesn't really seem like it's really that big of a deal. And I think that a lot of people, whenever this came out, there was a number of people that were pushing back on it, and the people that were pushing back on it did get met with a certain amount of criticism, and a certain amount of, I would say, people that just didn't really see what the big deal was, because I think they likened it to posting a degree on the wall from a certain like a certain different college, or a certification, or I guess a Boy Scouts badge or something like that. And I think that really I wanted to talk about this whole issue because I think live streaming as a medium is much more holistic than something like getting a degree in math, right? And what I mean by that is that whenever you get a degree in math, that means that you're very good in math. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good person, that your personality is good or bad. It more or less just means that you are very good at math. And a lot of the other examples that people used for different things that are, I guess comparative to like the badges of like how many average viewers that you have are much more specific than something like live streaming, and they don't have the entirely like holistic personality approach that live streaming does. I think that that's really, and this dovetails or tangents into something else that I probably also want to talk about. And hopefully this isn't going to be like an hour long video, so it'll probably have to be a completely separate video. But the emphasis and the importance that people place on being genuine and not necessarily being fake on live streams, and to a lesser extent on YouTube. But I think that a lot of people kind of expect that people are going to cut out the bad parts on YouTube versus on live streaming. If you've got an 8-hour broadcast, a 6, or even a 3-hour broadcast, I mean, your real personality is going to come out of there one way or another, at least some degree of it. I mean, you even have people like Dr. Disrespect. I mean, it's not like Dr. Disrespect takes off the wig and the glasses and everything and the headphones, and he just acts like a completely different guy. I think that for a lot of people, even people that run, personas and everything and personalities on their live stream, it's more or less an exaggerated or a caricature of themselves in some degree or another. And the difference really with live streaming is that whenever you get into that and the emphasis that people place on that, well, why is it important to be genuine? Because really the success of somebody whenever they're doing live streaming is almost like an evaluation of themselves as a person and an evaluation of themselves as a personality. And I think that whenever you really try to attribute a number to that specifically, it's much more hurtful, or it could be much more hurtful to somebody than if you just say that you got a good degree, because what you're really saying at that point is that this person has a personality that's able to attract more people. Now, it's not something that's explicitly stated, but it's implicitly applied, or sorry, implied, just based off the community. And I think that really this is a question that I would ask anybody. I think I said this on my stream. What is the main thing that people use to judge somebody on Twitch? They use average concurrent viewer count. That is just the metric. If you don't like that, too bad. That's just the way it goes. They don't use follower count, they don't use subscriber count, they don't use chatters, they don't use the type of community or anything like that. The one thing that they use is that red number that goes up and down every 10 seconds. And that is what they judge streams on. And I think there's also, whenever you get into that, you realize that the people that usually have a lot of higher viewer count numbers usually have a better perception. And also, I think there's a certain amount of, like, I guess you could say, some different degree of a halo effect that happens whenever people see a stream that has a lot of viewers. There's a unconscious perception that that stream is going to be better because there's a lot of other people that like it, and if a lot of people are liking something, then other people are more likely to like it as well, just to fit in a way. And I think this happens very, very regularly, and even for no other reason than if you randomly see some person at 20,000 viewers that you've never seen before, and you click on their stream just to know what the hell is this about. And I think that's very common as well. But going back to what I was saying about the patches, I don't really think that doing something like that is a good idea for Twitch because of the way that the community has evolved and the way that it treats viewer count, and also with the volatile nature of it, especially whenever you're looking at it in terms of something that's evolving on like a 5 or a 10 or a 30-second basis. It can be really harmful to people because it's very easy for you to you wrap yourself up in this broadcast. You're broadcasting yourself, your personality, very, very regularly. And I think that whenever you attach a certain number to that, and then you have that codified and printed out and put on your shoulder, I think a much better way to describe this would be, if you go to some sort of like a Christmas dinner or something like that, or a business party, and every single person has their salary stamped on their shoulder. I think people would find that equally, maybe not offensive, but maybe slightly dehumanizing or patronizing, or I don't know, like relegating their entire value or anything like that down to the number. And why is that? It's not necessarily that money itself makes you a better or a worse person, but the societal standards around that money gives you that feeling in the same way that the viewer count expectations in the Twitch world and the live streaming world give you that same expectation and make you feel a certain way whenever you aren't doing as well as you think that you should. And I think that really this is a much larger issue because it's something that I think has been much more common on Twitch, especially in the past like 2 years or so, where you have people, and I think everybody kind of wants to be part of, in Twitch there's a lot of like kind of people living vicariously and parasocial relationships happening on Twitch, and because of that, you don't really want to be associated with or interacting with some place or somewhere or somebody who you feel is kind of like a loser. And I think that's the way a lot of people feel. And once somebody gives off the impression that they're losing, right, losing viewer count or whatever, and people latch onto that, it's more or less it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and in a lot of ways. And so people are like, oh my god, this stream is dying, and then people that are a little bit kind of on the fence or whatever try to invest themselves into another stream because they get some sort of secondary satisfaction whenever the stream does well. I was here, pog, right? I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. And this kind of does go into like what is really the core live streaming, like I don't know, psychology. And I think this also, like, the way that people view themselves as being part of the community and being part of the stream is also the same reason why I think that a lot of them, they have these, like, as I said, a parasocial relationship with the streamer. And this is much more common with streamers that emphasize, I guess, a lot of community interactions and more personality based streaming rather than gameplay based streaming. It's kind of like the difference between somebody who is, like streaming and just chatting and just like watching and reacting to videos. That's mostly a personality driven or YouTube driven, right? Both. It's an endeavor, right? And if you're just doing IRL streaming, sitting there talking, it's much more of a personal endeavor than if you are playing Fortnite, for example, and you're just a very, very great player at Fortnite. These two things are, I would say, relatively equal in terms of their value, but the way that people perceive them and what they get out of them are, I think, two very different things. Most of the time, if I want to see somebody who's really good at a game that I want to learn how to play, like Fortnite, I'll watch Tfue and I'll be like, man, this guy really sucks. And then I'll realize that that guy that Tfue just one shot would have killed me in one shot too, but I can watch him and I can vicariously be a god at Fortnite. And in the other way, I can go and I can watch somebody like Greek or like even like Trainwrecks or a lot of other people that do a lot of React content and just kind of community-based content, and they'll just sit down and talk about issues, and you have more of like a personal connection with them in a way that with a lot of gameplay streamers you don't really have in the same way. And again, this is not something that's neither one of these are inferior to each other. It's just a different audience with a different set of intentions. And I don't think that's bad in either way. The problem, however, is that usually with the personality streaming, and this is like generally what I think I'd probably do more of. I mean, because God knows who the fuck watches me for my gameplay. How exactly do you define, an audience in a personality based stream? And many times, what ends up happening is that a lot of these people will develop these parasocial relationships, and I think that that's really why a lot of people that are part of these personality stream communities react so negatively to streamers making decisions or being concerned about the viewer count, because it does, to a certain degree, uh, it relegates the relationship that the individual, the viewer, has with the streamer down to a numerical value. It's almost like dehumanizing. So people want to feel like they're having a relationship with the streamer, and whenever the streamer starts talking about viewer count, that kind of breaks that willing suspension of disbelief in a way, where you're like, okay, it kind of breaks the fantasy, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of really hard to say what the right phrase is for it, but I think that people have a illusion in their head that this is like their friend or they're hanging out with this guy, and whenever they start talking about viewer count, the person feels like they're just a number. The truth is that they ultimately are. I mean, it's impossible to really to keep track of that many people. And I think that's also just an unfortunate reality of certain streams that reach a certain size. Back whenever I had 2,000 or 500, I don't think I really had like 500 average viewers. I don't know, like maybe for a while, but like maybe 1,000 or so average viewers, I could pretty much keep track of and keep up with pretty much everybody that was in the channel. But I always really kind of feel bad whenever I see somebody that's in my stream, and they've been like subscribed for maybe a year or 6 months or something, and I don't recognize their name. I always feel almost like I'm kind of like cheating them, or I don't know. I'm like neglecting them in some way, and I think that's also there's a lot of people that feel that way because there's probably another misconception that a lot of these people don't really care about their communities, and I think almost every streamer really does care about their community to a certain extent, and the ones that don't are probably jaded, and it's more of a sour grapes and event rather than them just not caring at all to begin with. It's like they probably might have had a very bad experience, and because of that they're very socially or emotionally reserved, and they don't want to have that same type of interaction happen again because they're just afraid of getting hurt. And I know that might sound ridiculous, getting hurt on the internet, etc., whatever. But whenever you're investing, a very, very large part of your, waking hours and, into having people like you, and then they don't like you, and then they repudiate you even, that's whenever people do actually feel a certain amount of hurt. And I think anybody would really feel that way. if they invested that much of their time into something that was so personally driven, and then to get backlash against them, I think that would be harmful for anyone almost. And I think, I mean, really, that just kind of goes into like having more of like, I guess, a thick skin and being able to be, I guess, like personally, like having like a certain amount of self-esteem that's not really dictated or defined by the way that people view you, and or how many people are viewing you, at least in this circumstance. So all of this kind of ties into the way that viewers interact with somebody, and people treat me a lot better. Even viewers do treat me a lot better, and they're generally more positive if my stream is doing better. But if there's one day where I dip under, this is like, I remember one time, like this was during like the classic beta, someone called me. I was like, wow, Omega Lol only 35k Andy. I'm just a real fucking loser, huh? Wow. And you read stupid shit like that all the time, and it's kind of funny, but this is the way that actually that real people think. I mean, there's a real person that typed that in there. Now you can always play off the oh, they were trolling, but there's a lot of people that weren't actually pretending to be retarded. They were actually just retarded, and there's tons of them. And whenever my stream is doing very well, I see much more positivity and much more people that are, just generally, willing to say good things about me versus whenever my stream is not doing as well. And I think that really, whenever I took my break a while ago, I tried to wrestle with that idea a lot more and tried to create more of like a personal, like sense of self-esteem and self-worth rather than trying to derive that from some sort of external analytic. And I think that's something that's really helpful for really anybody who's trying to make content online. And it's something that I would absolutely encourage because I think it's really important for people's mental health. Ultimately, I think that really you can kind of like sideline a lot of that stuff for a while, like mental health stuff. But the problem is that, if you're in like a bad state of mind, and like this isn't some kind of like a crazy like, like mental health awareness or anything like that. Yeah, yeah, sure, but it's really like really simple. It's like if you have a bad day, you're probably less likely to put on a good stream, unless you're unless your content is all about getting mad. And even then, it's not a funny kind of mad, it's a mad kind of mad, and people don't want to watch a mad kind of mad. They want to watch a funny kind of mad. And that sounds stupid, but I think it's true. So if you don't really have that personality that you can bring into the stream that's, positive, or at least entertaining, that's really what matters. Entertaining, not necessarily positive or negative, entertaining and compelling, then you're not going to do very well. So I think it's very important to have that positive state of mind. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you're going into things with a strong sense of self worth and an internal sense of self worth, intrinsic sense of self worth, rather than an extrinsic from like analytics or what people are saying. And it's very much easier said than done. It's true, but this kind of moves over to the way that people treat you like as a content creator, right? Like how am I treated at like conventions or by other streamers or anything like that. I think that obviously whenever I start, if my stream's doing very well, there's going to be a lot more people that are willing to like network with me and talk to me and everything. And this is kind of like a double-edged sword, or at least it's like, I don't know, I feel like I've thought about a lot, like what is streaming kind of like, what is the industry of streaming like? And I think that the best way to describe it is like punk rock, because of, the very, very strong aversions to selling out, the, strong intent on being true to yourself and being genuine and being real. And I think that streaming in a lot of ways has a lot of mirrors and, parallels to punk rock in that way. So whenever I see people doing that, I think it's, it is a little bit kind of shady or transparent. Whenever, you do really well, it's like, someone, hey, congrats on this many viewers. Do you want to come on my podcast? Or, hey, congrats on this. Do you want to come and do this with me? Or do you want to be part of my video? Or, want to be involved with whatever we're doing? And the thing with that is that if you applied that same logic and that same cynicism to other industries, right, like a movie industry or uh, I don't know, like just generally business, right? If you're making a certain amount of money or your product's doing very well and other people want to do business with you, I mean, it kind of makes sense that they would want to do that whenever you're doing well. So there is a little bit of duality there that I don't think that a lot of streamers are able to really handle in a healthy way. They're either, very much into the business side of things and are not able to do things on a personal level, or vice versa. They're very, very personal about things, and they lose a lot of business opportunities because of it. And I think that for me personally, I'm definitely part of the second group there. I'm very kind of I don't really think like iconoclastic is really the word for it, but generally I try to be as genuine and as real as possible, right? I mean, of course, obviously I ham shit up for the stream. I mean, everybody knows that, but me telling you that is in a way being real in a way that I think a lot of other people aren't. Like of course I want to make shit really funny and I want to entertain people. Like that's the whole point. I log on to give people a good time. And yeah, usually whenever I'm doing things off stream, I don't have much of a reaction to anything. I don't really give a fuck, right? But I view streaming as kind of being in a room full of my friends. And I think anybody can kind of agree that you probably act a lot different whenever you're with your friends than whenever you're by yourself. And, I think really a very good example of this that's codified is the fact that, like, different shows have laugh tracks, right? You have laugh tracks on these different shows because laughter is in a way something that people are kind of like, if they hear somebody else laughing, they'd be more likely to laugh themselves. So people would perceive the show as being more funny if it had a laugh track because they're prompted to laugh. And even though they're being prompted to laugh by, some sort of like, I don't know, like a psychological thing, I guess. I don't know really what the word is for it specifically, but some sort of psychological thing where like they laugh because somebody else is laughing. This is something that's very, very codified and used even in other types of entertainment media. So I think that it's also very common to see, streamers kind of emulate that in different ways and emulate that through different emotions. And I mean, you can even go back and they probably had that in Shakespearean plays back in the day before we even had computers. So this is nothing new, but I think that whenever you have something like that where, people, you're not necessarily acting exactly the way that you would act in real life, there are some people that want to have a completely genuine personal experience. And I really don't think that streaming is a very healthy outlet for that. I don't. And you can say, oh, just go make friends, but everybody knows it's really not that easy, especially whenever you're getting older, as unfortunately I am, and I guess all of us are too. So it makes things much more difficult. But I don't really know exactly how to reconcile all of the different elements of streaming and the way that the viewer count is used to define people on a personal level. And I think that's really what the big difference between viewer count and subscribers and on YouTube, for example, or likes on Instagram. That's the big difference between those things and something more, more specific and more focused, like a degree or like a certification or a trophy from winning, a football game or something like that, because those necessarily aren't about like a more holistic personality, and they're not correlated to someone's personality in general. But I did want to make this video and kind of talk about this issue because I think that it's something that I do feel really strongly about and I think a lot about. And honestly, like, my video thing's about to end, or I'd probably be going on for another 20 minutes. Thank God it's about to end. This would be an hour-long video. But I did want to sit down and share my thoughts on this topic because I think it's really important for people to talk about it and be more honest about it. I think it'd be better for audiences and it'd also be better for broadcasters. So hopefully people will be able to share their thoughts and talk about how they feel about the issue. But for me personally, that's pretty much where I'm coming from. I think that the streaming community as a whole could do a better job at trying to look at people and stop evaluating on personality in the same way. I think it's very, very, I don't know, it's not very healthy. But those are basically my thoughts. I'd be curious to hear yours and how you feel about the whole viewer count thing and everything else. But that's pretty much all I've got. So, peace!